Hello and welcome to the Osceola Seminole Sidelines Postgame show. My name is Pat Burnham, and I am joined by former FSU offensive lineman and college football coach Mark Salva, and of course Charles Fishbein is joining us tonight. Guys, another tough postgame edition of Seminole Sidelines as Florida State gets rolled up on the ground by Boston College and loses 28-13 to start the season 0-2, and probably more important than anything else, start ACC play 0-2. Got themselves in a deep hole to enter the season. And Mark, you and I were talking about before we got started. Much like last week, not a whole lot to be positive about. You got an defensive line that gave up 263 yards on the ground. FSU managed 21. FSU was very inconsistent in the passing game. Missed a couple of huge opportunities on overthrows, drops. Just another underwhelming performance for a team that outside of Alex Mastromano and Ryan Fitzgerald does not seem to do anything well. Mark, let's start with you. Get your overall impressions of the game, and then we'll kind of break it down a little bit.
We built this team up, built these players up to be something they're just not. I think that's the bottom line. And I go back to the preseason when we talked about it on here, that when you lose the level of leadership that we lost on both sides of the ball, that's not easily replaceable. That's number one. Number two, offensively, we thought the identity of this team was going to be run the ball, lash and pass. And our inability to run the football puts this team in deep holes. When we're going third and long, our receiver, our passing game in general is just not good enough at this point, for sure. Can't get off jams. We finally throw some slants and some really nice things against man coverage, some nice route combinations. I mean, those outs to Toafili, that's just easy throwing catches, and we can't even execute that. That's disheartening. Offensive line breaking down in pass protection. And DJ's not a mobile quarterback. Jordan Travis used to bail us out on those situations, and DJ can't do it. Then defensively, watching college football all weekend, it really, just really was evident to me. The good football teams don't get out leveraged. We get out leveraged on every level, on the defensive line, at linebacker, and in the secondary. Receivers out leverage us. And what I mean by that is, we get pinned in, and we get bad angles, and we lose contain, and a running back goes outside of defensive end and pins him in on a quarterback rolling out. When that guy flashes in front of Marvin Jones Jr., he's got to see that. He's got to know, I can't let this guy pin me in. Third guy out on wheel routes. I mean, come on, that was a problem, several years ago, and that's manifested itself again. Now, part of that is, we didn't know what we were going to get. The first two drives, I'm thinking, okay, we have no idea what this team was about. They didn't play a game. We did. They identified our weaknesses. They took advantage of it. They schemed it up. Hopefully they can make some adjustments. We can get back in the game. And they did for some stretches of the game. We got some stops, but offensively just couldn't take advantage of it. Just the poor execution in the passing game and the poor execution in the running game, quite frankly. And yet teams can run it against us with no problem.
Yep.
And that's just disheartening. So, like I said, we built these guys up into something they're not, and that's partly our fault, I guess. Partly, just maybe them eating the rat poison, as Nick Saban used to say. There's got to be some hard looks in the mirror. There's got to be some reality checks, and this team has got to find some identity. And more than anything, this team has got to identify some leaders and the right guys to lead this team out of this hole. And it can still be done. I mean, it's still, we can still win 10 games, hopefully, but at this point, I don't see a way.
Listen. They're not going to win. They're not going to win 10 games based off what we've seen. And listen, we're not surprised by the passing game. We saw the passing game struggle all camp long, and we wondered what that would be like. And to your point, Mark, running at will, but what I didn't see was, you didn't see a lot of the eye can, the emotion. They use a lot of condensed sets.
Yeah.
Hey, we're just going to run it at you. We're going to run it. You got to stop us. To me, that was the most depressing thing about this game. was it, it was there was not a lot of finesse to the running game. It was power, 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 inside zone, all that, quarterback counter. And then they got quarterback going late. Fish, your overall thoughts on what you saw tonight from Florida State and from Boston College?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, and Mark can agree with this, is that if you don't win up front on the O-line and D-line, everything else doesn't matter. And they got dominated for the second week in a row. That was like BC basically controlled the game from the moment it started. I mean, it was like 5, 6, 7 yards a carry. And Florida State never seemed to really, other than a couple times in the middle of the game, they really never got any key stops. I thought they got dominated throughout the game, and that was a disappointing thing. They had their chances, to make a couple plays. This football team's not a good football team. I know a lot of the fans are going to sit there and say they're not well coached and this and that. They're just not a good football team right now. That's part of it. And I get it. Listen, you can put some of this on the coaches, no doubt. But that last play that Marvin Jones made on the third down, all right, where he is just running inside, has no care for the world, and lets the guy get outside and pick up the first down. I'm sure the coaches aren't teaching that. It's like that's somebody that's playing for himself. I see a lot of selfish play out there. I don't see a team out there. This isn't the same team as last year. People got to move on from last year. That was a team. This is a bunch of individuals, a lot of them that got paid, and they're not performing to the level of what they're getting paid. It's time, I think. Listen, I know it's early in the season, but I said this to a friend just before jumping on. I think you open up that competition on Monday, and nobody deserves a spot right now. That thing should be open, even the quarterback position, and we'll get into that. I don't think DJ deserves to just be handed the keys with the way he played. This team needs competition, and let these guys fight it out, because nobody deserves a guaranteed starting spot right now.
Yeah, listen, I agree. I mean, this team's not going to live up to whatever expectations the fan base had for it or itself based off what we've seen. And listen, they are who they are. It's just like I wrote before this, when we did keys and predictions yesterday. I picked Boston College to win. I thought it would be a much shorter game, a much closer game. I did not expect FSU to get dominated and whipped on both sides of the ball like they did. This team is not last year's team. We talked about the talent that it lost, and we talked last week about can they find a leader on defense. There does not seem to be one. You mentioned Marvin Jones going back to that first drive. He gives up contain for a first down. Play action motion, first down, receiver was wide open, busted coverage, blown coverage on 2nd and 15 to get to 3rd and 5, blown coverage on 3rd and 5, which was a long pass dropped by Trayshawn Ward. So you got a little bit lucky there because they were driving the ball right down the field. Then they come back the second drive, back to what we talked about, Mark, condensed sets, blown coverages multiple times leading to the first touchdown for BC by either one of the linebackers on a 3rd and 6 to set up 1st and goal. And then let's talk about the coaching. Florida State in the first half, Mark and Fish, had two series where they had 1st and 10, 1st and goal inside the 10, and Mike called 6 straight passing plays. And I don't really understand that. We talked to, clearly only 16 rushing attempts for the game. Mark, did he give up on the running game today?
Well, those first 2 drives, he tried to open up with the run, and we get a long yardage, and that's just not our strength. And at that point, it's like, what can I run? And is that a function of Alex not being there? I don't know. Like I said in the begining, that was supposed to be our identity with this, the talent and the supposed talent and the experience of the offensive line. We were going to, in the running back room, we were going to be a running team and lean on the running game and defense. And, we were thinking that's a pretty good formula to win ball games. And like you said, only had 16 rushes. That's amazing to me. I remember in that, I don't know if it was the first or second series where we kicked the field goal in the first half. It was probably the last one, because we had I think a minute 30 and we had in goal to go. We could have ran the ball a couple times there, and I'm sitting there looking at it. We're getting good run looks. It's not like they blitzed and brought the house. They were playing coverage, and we had some good run looks. We could have ran the ball, at least once or twice in that situation. Yeah. And we threw the ball, all the time. I don't know.
Yeah, that second field goal, 1st and 6, pass broken up. Defensive lineman got his hand up. 2nd and 6, bad throw by on the corner route to Darion, who was wide open in the end zone. And 3rd and 6, a bad pass. I believe it was to Morlock. It was behind him, and Kyle had a rough game, but certainly not finishing off those drives, and particularly Mark and Fish. I think they needed 7 points when they had the short field on the 35 where Matt Romano set them up, pinned Boston College deep. It was a win for Boston College to hold them to a field goal. I mean,
100%.
Boston College had to feel pretty good about that. And, so you go in 14-6. Like I said, I got circles all over the place. A second touchdown drive, blown coverage by a linebacker. 2nd and 11, tight end delay, puts them in 1st and goal, blown coverage by a linebacker. I mean, same things that happened last week.
It's not so much they just totally get out leveraged. They on those wheel routes, they're just not, their eyes are somewhere else, and they get out leverage. The guy gets position on them, and he's chasing. Is it Cam Riley on the one? Just totally, he's flat-footed, and that back's going out in the flat and turning it up, and just standing there flat-footed. So I don't know what they're looking at. I don't know what, it was obviously man coverage, and they had a good plan. They knew we were going to play a lot of man coverage, and they motioned the guy, and there's DB going, okay, I got man coverage. They run 2 slants and a wheel route, and there's a linebacker trying to navigate trash, and he's getting a late start as it is. But that's what I'm talking about getting that leverage. Guys get in front of them, get us out of position, and there's less easy throws and catches. But we make it look hard. We make these easy throws and catches look hard.
Yeah.
They made them look so easy. It's just, it's just really disheartening.
I mean, the one thing with this team is that they don't win first down, and this with a lot of teams unless you have an elite level quarterback. If you don't win first down and you're constantly behind the sticks, I just don't see how this offense, with no firepower really at the running back position, other than maybe Cam Davis down the road, I don't see how they get going. I mean, this is a team that has to win first down, and it seemed like every time you turned around, they never won first down. They were either in 2nd and 12, 2nd and 13, and that's just not going to be very productive with this team.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, let's move over to the second half. FSU scores that field goal to make it 14-6 going into the half, and of course they get the ball back in the first half. And we've seen Mike go for it a ton on 4th down. But FSU takes the ball out on the 25-yard line to start the drive, comes in a 2-back set, which we didn't see a lot of, instantly has some success there, pickup of 9 yards. Then, inside zone for first down, then tackle for loss, incomplete on a bad throw, 3rd and 11, complete to 9 for a couple yards. So you got 4th and 5 on your own 47. A ton of time to go, really a one-score game, one score and a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. Mike decides to go for it on 4th and 5. I thought it was a bad decision by Mike to go for it. It seemed like a panic move to me that early in the game, down by 1 score, and then double down with a bad play call and double down with a bad throw. And, the offense struggled the next drive. They came out on the 3rd drive, scored a touchdown, a great pass and throw by Portier. Again, go back to the 4th series, Florida State, plagued by pressures for scrambles. Inside, they went back to the inside zone. Portier again showed up, but on 4th and 17, you go for it, throws into triple coverage. Now you could say that the interception was as good as a punt, and I think they had to go for it at that point. But let's go back to that first drive. Mark and Fish, did Mike make a mistake, either in the decision to go for it on 4th down or the play call? And obviously it was a bad throw by DJU, but just get your thoughts on that decision that early in the 3rd quarter to make that decision and give Boston College a short field, which I believe they actually converted into a touchdown.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of the whole 4th down early in games. I believe you don't. I don't like leaving points on the field when you have a chance at a field goal. I think this whole idea that you got to go for it every time you're inside the 40. Every game's different. And sometimes, like, this team's not good enough to convert 4th downs. I would have punted the ball. The game's a long game, and to continue to give away short fields, especially with this team that's going to struggle to score offensively this year.
Or stop people defensively.
Yeah, I just think you make a team. Listen, it's hard in college football to go 10, 12 plays and score touchdowns. It just is. Somebody's going to get a mistake. You're going to get a a penalty. You're going to get something that's going to cause you to go backwards. It's hard to sustain drives. Every game you watch, the teams that can score in 4, 5, or 6 plays, they're gonna be the most productive. This idea that DJ is not going to make a mistake and you're going to go 10, 12 plays is ridiculous. I'd punt the ball. I'd let your defense get settled into the game. It's early in the game. I'm just not into this, let's go for it on every 4th down inside the 40. It's just, I think it's bad coaching.
Yeah.
I think part of it is analytics and part of it is got to be feel. And every time we drop back to throw, it's less than a coin flip proposition at this point. And so, I tend to agree with you guys that, at that point, what play do you actually have confidence that they're going to execute? I just, up to that point, it was hardly anything. I mean, we went down the field on some trick plays and a great play by Portier, but other than that, the passing game was anemic, and it's just drop passes, but bad passes. Just DJ gets anybody around his feet and around him, the throws are just totally errant.
Yep.
There was 2 plays that told me everything about DJ in this game, and I personally thought he should have been benched.
I did too.
The touchdown in the end zone, and I thought my eyes honestly were playing tricks on me on the trick play. 21 was so wide open. I mean, honestly, like any high school kid should have been able to hit that. And what I don't understand is why is he looking short on basically one of those plays where you get the ball back, and that's the whole purpose of that play is to look deep. He had 21, 30 yards open on the sideline. I mean, all you had to do was like toss it up, and the play in the end zone, that pass, he literally could have thrown it underhanded to 21. So 21 had a shot at 2 touchdowns. Terrible plays. And then even last week, you go back to last week, he had the wide open guy in the corner route. He threw it short. The guy dove. He's just not making plays, and he's playing at a level that honestly, if this was a Steve Spurrier coach team, he would have been pulled. Like, let's be real. He is not playing well enough to just be handed the keys. And you have guys like Glenn that have been there for a year, that when the things were tough last year, he didn't play great, but the kid, I think someone like that deserves a shot if your starter is going to play at this level.
Yeah. Yep. I know he didn't play great, but you got to remember, Fish, also, he was out for, he didn't practice for like 6 weeks before he got thrown in that situation. So we hadn't seen Brock Lynn. Remember, he was hurt.
No, there's hurt. Yeah, but
what I'm saying is, you're saying, well, he didn't look that great. I don't think we've seen the real guy. I agree with you. What I'm saying is, I agree with you.
No, I'm giving Brock Glenn the benefit of the doubt that he came in at the end of the year in a non-win situation where he wasn't ready. He was 3rd string. He's not getting the reps in practice during the year, and here he is, and he was hurt. And I saw a kid that fought for the team, even though he didn't play to a high level. He fought for the team. He's been there. I just think, like, honestly, he deserves a shot. That's just
I agree with you. I'm saying I agree with you. I think, but here's the thing you also got to consider is that once you pull DJ, you can't undo it. He's done.
I understand that, but I think you can lose this team if you don't go with someone else. I don't think that other players have. I don't think the other players have faith in DJ. They don't look. Either. You look at the other players. The players tell you everything. They do not look confident when he's out there.
There's no juice on the offensive side of the ball.
No.
There's no belief like they had with Jordan last year. Listen, if at the very least, guys, they've got to start at 0-2. And you're not, listen, there's some really tough games for this team coming up. I mean, just look at what Notre Dame and Miami did this weekend. If those are who those teams are, that's another 2 losses coming to you at some point.
You got to look at this now as a 1 game off. Like, they got to just beat next
week.
And that's not an easy game. Don't tell me they don't want a piece of Florida State now with them being wounded. I think if you look at the whole season, you'll get overwhelmed. They got to just win 1 game and then try to get this thing rolling again. But I think the way that you do that is you open that quarterback competition. You open up some of these other spots. They need to get Hakeem back. I don't know what's wrong with him, what type of injury he has. I think he's a key to their success because of his talent. And I think that you saw it today when Cam ran the ball. He ran with authority. On those carries, he dragged defenders the pile twice. To me, I want that guy out there. That means
Yeah.
he's fighting for the team. He wants to be out there. There's guys out there that just didn't look like they wanted to be out there, that they're collecting their checks, and that's it. Let's go home.
Well, listen, I agree with you on the whole Brock DJ thing. I think at the very least, they've got to get Brock in for meaningful snaps in the first quarter, in the second quarter, get it in for a series. Listen, I don't think DJU can totally quit on him. I don't think he would. I mean, the guy's got aspirations of playing at the next level. That would be a bad look for him. And I think he's got to do the right thing for the team. And listen, the passing game was the strength of the offense. I mean, there's no getting around that because they couldn't run the ball today. But yeah, I think you gotta give Brock some shots. I mean, he's got a little energy with him. You see it in practice. I did not think, I said it in some of our preseason podcasts and some of the stuff I wrote breaking down the personnel, particularly when they released the depth chart. I did not see I thought the quarterback competition, what I saw when they went against each other 11-on-11 good in team this year, and it's not live. I thought Brock played as well as DJU most of the camp. Now, what they saw in one-on-ones and scale, which I did not watch a whole lot of because I watched the offensive and defensive line, I don't know, but maybe that's where the decision was made. But in camp, in team 11-on-11, and of course we don't get to see scrimmages, I thought Brock had close to as good a camp as DJU. But yeah, I don't know how Mike's going to navigate that, but at some point, and maybe it's your third loss or maybe it's your fourth loss, if that's what's happening, and it certainly looks like it's going to, at some point you got to start getting Brock ready, and he's not going to get ready in practice. It's not live game reps, and it may be a hard call for Mike at some point, and it may be hard for DJ to hear, but from what we've seen, I think you need to see if somebody can inject that. And listen, I think it's important to get Hakeem back, Fish, but he's still very much a guy that's in development. I mean, he made a couple plays last year to flash, but I don't think he's a guarantee. I think he gives you another option, and he may turn into the guy we thought he was when he was recruited. But
what I think he gives you is if he gives you that ability to stretch the field a little bit, it gets guys out of the box. It just seems like nobody respects FSU's passing game right now, and they're just bringing people. They're flooding the lanes. We're not running the ball effectively because we're not backing these defenses off. I don't think that's going to change unless you have somebody like Hakeem that has this. Listen, it's not just the speed, it's the size. You saw with Portier today when they had him make a few plays, and I think Hakeem has more talent than Portier.
Yeah, well, listen, and Seminole win, you're right. It's got a chance to be a tough one based on what we've seen with Clemson's defense, and they did play well at times against Georgia. Then Miami, Notre Dame looked fabulous. North Carolina was a really physical football team against Minnesota the other night. SMU, I think the jury's still out on them. From what I saw against Nevada, they kind of got roughed up on both sides of the line, like Florida State did. Although SMU was able to pull it out. And then listen, Memphis, if they're as good as if they're as good as touted, which they were preseason favorite for the American Athletic Conference champions, that'll be hard. That'll be a very, very, very challenging game for Florida State to win. And I would think that they would probably be the underdog at home against Memphis, depending on what Memphis did this weekend and does next weekend. All right. So we talked about, some of the on-field performance guys. There were two penalties really messed things up for Florida State. You close the gap to 21-13. You kick off, and then I did not see what Byron Turner did, but he got a personal foul penalty, gives the Eagles the ball on the 40-yard line. They end up turning that over into a touchdown. You had an illegal substitution penalty on the touchdown play, 12 guys, and you still couldn't stop them. I mean, rubbing salt into the wounds right there. But, yeah, listen, there's lack of discipline on this team. Then you saw it again. Richie Leonard never should have put his hands on the guy.
It wasn't Richie. It was Ferguson.
Ferguson never should. I mean, the guy flopped. There's no doubt about that. I think they got lucky to get a call. But the evidence of this not being a well-developed football team, discipline-wise, and listen, I said, yes, I told you guys in the preseason predictions that this was our game prediction for this week, that Mike Norvell against Tim Lewis and Adam Fuller against Bill O'Brien and Will Lawing were going to have their hands full, and they got pencil whipped again. And listen, I don't think I think Georgia Tech might have been more creative in play calling, but obviously the lines of scrimmage are a mess. Mark, how do they correct the offensive and defensive lines to get? I mean, they're getting.
You got to have spring practice in some way. You've got to teach guys to take on blocks, get off blocks, and teach them how to out leverage the offense. And until we start doing that, there's no chance. Like you said, it wasn't a scheme thing today. Georgia Tech it was, but today it was just, you know what? They blocked us. We didn't get off blocks. We got out leveraged.
They took their manhood. Let's be real. They just flat out took their manhood.
100%. 100%.
That's want to today. I know people.
Yeah, it is want to, but it's also playing discipline and playing with fundamentals. It's taking on blocks, taking on with the right shoulder, getting off blocks, maintaining your leverage, setting the edge, eyes in the right place. All those little things. I mean, I don't doubt that they want to.
I mean, Mark, you saw it yesterday. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you saw it yesterday with USC with the new D coordinator. They had the same players that they had a year ago, plus a few kids, and they were attacking. There were 6 guys. Where was that Florida State football that we know where there's 6 guys attacking the ball carrier? Like they weren't flying to the ball. This looks like honestly the end of the Mickey era, the end of the Jimbo era, the end of the Taggart era of defense. They did not look. That's the one thing at Florida State you could always count on is aggressiveness and ability to attack on defense. And they don't look like they're attacking. They look like they're waiting to do the other team to do something to them.
Yeah, listen,
and that's kind of my point. That there's something taking away the aggressiveness. Is it that they're not trying, or is it they're thinking too much? Is it they don't know what to do? Is it there's a lot of reasons that it could be, but Pat Payton, where's Pat Payton, right? Is he same guys last year?
Yeah, and I'm not. Listen, I think some of the leadership should have fallen on his shoulders. It doesn't look like he's taking it over. I mean, you don't, and I don't see anybody rallying the troops on. Now, I don't listen. We're not on the sideline, so we don't know what happens there. But I just don't see an on the field leader on either side of the ball. I mean, you would think DJU coming into his last year, and we thought that transition had been handled well. Now, I was not a big fan of the bridge quarterback situation to begin with. I wrote about it. I thought that Brock needed this year to get ready for next year, or Luke to get ready for next year. But it certainly doesn't. The offensive line is particularly Maurice and the whole. You were hoping on Maurice and Darius to be your leaders, but I'm sure they are leaders in those meeting rooms in that locker room, but their play is not living up to being leaders. Your leaders got to be your best players, your toughest players, and your more disciplined players. And listen, I don't know, Mark. They might have done all right in pass protection. I had a number of pressures down on my sheet today, and
they struggled. Darius had a rough night. Darius had a rough night against that kid, that defense under theirs. None of it was good, and there wasn't any aggressiveness on defense. They got blocked again. They're just always behind. And offensively, the inability to run the ball, move people, cover people up on the offensive line. We're blocking half guys, and there's just no push at all. And Cam Davis, bless his heart, that guy. And maybe start thinking about how Cam Akers used to be, right? Yep. We wasted that guy with that bad offensive line we had. And I'm saying our offensive line is bad, but they're sure not playing real well right now.
Yeah, and Mark, I asked you this question because you've been you've been on some teams where you go into off week with a bad taste in your mouth and a lot of work to do. How does Mike approach this? How does particularly on the lines of scrimmage, how do Alex Atkins approach his unit, and how does Odell Haggins and JP approach their units? How does this team get to where it needs to be to, let's just say, be competitive with Memphis, let alone beat them, because they're going to come here a ranked team more than likely.
I remember, in a situation like this, you go down every player, and you find out who quit. That's number one. All right, who didn't give maximum effort every play and who did? And you got to go with those guys. if there's guys out there on the film loafing, if there's guys on the film not doing what they're supposed to do, if there's guys on that film, you got 2 weeks to get somebody else ready. Like Fish said, you open it up, you get some competition going. You got to go back to some really basic fundamentals of blocking and tackling, and lining up right, and not having procedure penalties on offense, and and throwing and catching. I mean, you got to do those basic fundamental things and just find something that you can do. Got to find some identity on offense. Got to find something that we can do well. What's our formula to move the ball? It's got to be some form of running the football, because the passing game is way too inconsistent.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe one of the good things coming out of this game, guys, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, they played a ton more people than they did last week. So to your point, Mark, maybe they will find some positives on guys that they were not exactly counting on, or Daniel Lyons again flashed a couple times to me. Blake did. Still a lot of mistakes by the linebacker core, but maybe. And we saw Sione Lalehi in the game a lot quicker than we did last week. We saw Juice Cryer in the game. So maybe as they get into the film, they will see some of these younger guys flash. And like you said, you got almost 2 weeks to get ready for what's going to be a noon kickoff against Memphis. I think maybe they might find some positives in individual play. I don't think you're going to find any in group play. I mean, the tackling by the secondary, even the corners, Isaiah Thomas, Lewis Reddick mentioned it, did not have a good game tackling wise. And
I didn't either.
Yeah, I think I don't. Shaheem is who he is at this point. But yeah, I think I think that I think right now you got to find the kids that want to play and get them in the game, and get the guys that don't want to play and are not playing hard. Now I don't. Listen, they didn't give up. Defense had a couple 3-and-outs in the first half. They had a couple of 3-and-outs in the second half. Trying to give the offense a chance, and the offense just couldn't get it going. But listen, a very flawed football team at this point, guys. I am, like I said, I am not shocked that they lost, because what we saw on film last week was not a very good football team, and we could talk. I heard people talking. We had guys on our staff saying they were going to win by Florida State was going to win by 2 touchdowns, and my response was, "What film showed you that? Are we talking about brands?" Because Florida State's got a better helmet than Boston College and a better reputation as a football program. But what did anybody see on film from last week that thought this team was going to come in and blow out Boston College? I think what I'm shocked at is the physical nature of way they are getting beat up front, particularly after what we thought were going to be good units coming into this season based on what we saw at camp. But what we're finding out is if you can't see them scrimmage, there's only so much you can learn about how good they are in their totality.
I think what you saw in camp is you saw 2 average lines of scrimmage making right, and
they're both making each other look good.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's a lot to that, because now all of a sudden you got guys hitting them in the mouth, and they're like, whoa, what is this about?
Yeah,
it's just I'm just beside myself, just trying to understand how we went from, and as Fish said, we got to put last year away, but to have this big a fall in execution and just fight is perplexing to me.
I have felt for a while. I think this is going to be norms for college football, where you see teams go 12-0, kind of like the NFL. A team makes the Super Bowl, it's not the same anymore. And you're going to have new teams. You don't know how those personalities are going to gel. You're bringing in 40, 50 new guys. Mark, there's no continuity anymore. So you're basically rolling dice and hoping you come up with a winner every time. It's just hard to do. I've said this is going to be very hard to sustain, especially in this portal era, because FSU has not done a very good job of developing those younger high school kids. You go and look at the receiver room. Portier's their best upperclassman. You hear the rumors, the best guys that are on the team, wide receivers with the most upside, are all freshmen. You can't rely on those. You look, I think Cam is going to be the best running back by midseason. You look at the tight end room. I mean, Courtney and Morlock should not. These aren't FSU caliber players. I hate to say it. I mean, they don't belong out there. And this is a problem, is you have guys that have taken spots of Jaheim Bell is in the NFL. Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson are in the NFL, and you're replacing them with guys and that not having the same type of talent. And then two,
our track record for that matter.
You know, you've got to have upperclassmen. You can't just have this turnover where you lost so many productive and leaders. I mean, Verse and Fisk were leaders on that defense. You had Jordan on offense. You lost all that leadership, and now you're relying on guys that we talked about it last week with the two DNs. You got Marvin Jones and Peyton that are both basically the same guy. It's good to have one on the field, but you'd like to have one strong side DN that can hold that edge, that can set that edge on run plays. Maybe they need to go to one of the guys they brought in, but they need bigger guys up front and guys that want to be there. I mean, the only guy on the D tackle position that looked good was Lyons. Yeah. That was the only one that looked like he's the one that got spun around and still made a play. Where's Darrell Jackson? Where's Farmer? Those two guys got paid, and it looks like they basically cashed their checks, and they're done for the year. Well,
if they keep on playing this way, their checks they can sign with the NFL are going to be a lot less than what they thought. Because I don't know right now if they should come out. I mean, they both got another year of eligibility.
They're going to probably be two guys that are going to have to seriously consider coming back. But at the same time, are they good locker room guys? You know,
I don't know.
You know, that's the whole thing.
You know, we knew at some point the hit rate on the portal guys would even out, right? They had great success the first couple of years under Mike. You brought in all conference players and Jared Verse and Braden Fisk and some other guys. You knew Keon was a really talented guy coming out of Michigan State. You replace him with a Benson that's not nearly as didn't have a proven track record as Keon, not explosive as Keon, not as long as Keon. Same thing when you go into the portal and you replace Verse with Marvin Jones Jr. Marvin's still young. He's not developed yet as a defensive end. This is his first year playing as a defensive end with his hand in the ground. And then Grady Kelly and Tommy Durajay are not Braden Fisk. So you did not hit the lotto in the transfer portal from what we've seen right now, like you have in years past. And I agree with you. With the era of free agency, you're gonna listen. No recruiting classes. Not everyone that's in a recruiting class, as good as a recruiting class may be, is going to make the transition to major college football or better football, and on the transfer portal level. And listen, they just have not. They did. You had to trust what the kids that Mike was bringing in because of the success he had. It just hasn't panned out through two games.
Nobody's hit at the rate they've hit the last 2 years.
That's what I just said.
Like it's truly remarkable. It's the reason they went undefeated is because they hit and those kids went up. I mean, you and I both thought Verse was good, but that kid superseded, I believe, even our expectations early on in that LSU game 2 years ago. These guys played above even the level we thought. I mean, I thought Fisk was a nice player, but what he played like at the end of the year was a man possessed and played at a different level. It's going to be difficult. They got to recruit the high school level better. And I think pull away from that portal just a little bit, start developing some of these young guys, because I truly believe that the guys that are going to win for you at the end of the day are the ones that have been through that grind, that knows what this program means, than these mercenaries that you just bring in for 1 year. I think sometimes you'll get lucky, but more times than not, you're going to have a lot of situations like we have this year.
Yeah, and I think you got to find a fine line with it, because you're going to have to go out and grab some kids in the portal for various reasons. Either you've got to get your program going back in the right direction, and you got some younger kids. But I agree. I think that there's a fine line there, and I think it's going to be a moving line each and every year, depending on where your program's at.
I mean, look at the situation with LSU and USC. They both had quarterbacks that could have easily left. And you look, those two guys, you would take both of those guys right now at Florida State, what you saw last night, over DJ. And those guys stuck it out. They were part of that program. They could have easily left. And now they're getting rewarded, both programs, because there isn't that transition from their first round picks to that next year. They both have guys that they can rely on all year. We don't know what we have in DJ, other than he's inconsistent, and that's what he's been his whole career.
Yep. Yeah, and we talked.
Yeah, nothing's changed with that. Yeah. We knew what he was coming in, but that's my point though, is that the formula for this offense was going to be running the football, and then using DJ's arm, give him play action pass, give him a clean pocket, and let him step into a throw. When he steps into the throw, he makes some decent ones. But man, if there's people around him, it's awful. And so to me, we got to find some identity on offense, and we got to figure out ways to run the stinking football, or else because if we're only running the ball 16 times in a ball game, that's not a way to win them.
Yeah, and this clearly, despite the fact that Boston College brought the same front four it played with last year back, clearly not the same defense, both schematically and not attitude-wise. They got after Florida State pretty hard. Their secondaries was good last year. It was good today for the most part. I think DJ was exactly 50% passer today, 21 of 42. The one bad interception that kind of changed the game. I think that was probably the tipping point in the game. And you had those two penalties, personal foul penalties, that, kind of did you in. But yeah, listen.
But Pat, the one thing with this team under Norvell you could always count on was the run game. Even his first year when those teams
he figured out a way to scheme it. Yeah, you're right.
Mean, you go look today, 16 for 21 yards. Like I don't think they've had this output even in their first or second year when they weren't good. Even during the COVID year, I can't remember them rushing 16 times for 21 yards.
And this is clearly an hyperbole when I said it. And I said it to Mark, and I said it during the summer, and I said it to a couple of people. All right, Jordan Travis. When you lost him, it was like giving a gap back to the defense. They don't have to account for the quarterback in the run game anymore against Florida State. That's been a huge difference in being able to scheme a run game. And I think, I don't.
No, you're exactly right.
Mark, I'm not the X's and O's guys you are, but God, you can see that. They're not. You go back to last week against Georgia Tech, and they're running zone read, and the defensive ends are crashing. They're not even worried about DJU. And listen, they're not going to worry about DJU until he starts running harder.
He can't run. That's not the answer. He is that you don't have a running quarterback with DJU in there, and they're not scared of the passing game either. So that not only do you lose a gap, you'll lose the threat of a passing game. To Fish's point earlier, there's nobody to stretch the defense. And that furthers the problem. So, like I said, you got to figure out a way to scheme it. And it's incumbent upon the backs to make somebody miss or break some tackles. But offensive line's got to block better. They got to cover guys up. They got to move people out of the way. They're just not doing it.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's going to be at this rate, it's going to be a very long season for Florida State. It'll be interesting to see what Mike Norvell and Adam Fuller have to say over the next couple of days as they address them. At least Michael addressed the meeting tonight. I don't know whether they'll have the coordinators meeting later in the week with no game next Saturday. Listen, there are some guys on this staff that got significant raises, and they need to start earning them after this week. I don't know what they do. I don't know how they light a fire in this team. Now,
I said, they got to go back and have spring practice, and they got to find guys that'll fight.
Because
they got 2 weeks to figure it out.
Yeah, right now, guys, this is not a very good football team, and the 2 games they have put on film that are evidence of who they were are a shell of what this team and what this program has been about the last 2 years, and a lot of work to do. And listen, I think we've talked it into the ground.
I don't know what else to say.
It's just another bad day.
And Wade has a point here. 0-3 when you go to the bowl game. I said this on the show on Tuesday. I said, that Georgia game didn't count. Well, it only didn't count if we picked it up and started winning again. But now that we've lost, all of a sudden now we hadn't won in 3 games.
Yeah,
and that's like everything else becomes a habit. You better be very careful.
Listen, I think they'll come in as underdogs in Memphis in 2 weeks. I think they'll have a chance to. Somebody just lost $3,500 on this game. They must have taken Florida State in the points with big money. I don't know.
Why?
I don't know. But listen, I think they got.
That's called betting with your heart instead of your head.
Listen, I think right now Cal looks like their best chance for their first win. We'll see what Memphis looks like this weekend when they play, but they are supposed to be a top 25 team if they're as good as the pundits and experts say they are, and all the preseason publications and all the media forecasting for the AAC. And we'll see what happens with Memphis, but we will have more post-game coverage. Kurt Weiler and Bob Ferrante are in Mike Norvell's press conferences, and we'll have the latest from Mike and the players. Fish and Mark, I appreciate you guys taking some time out of your evening to join me on this late Monday night Labor Day, and we will be back later in the week with Seminole Sidelines. We'll have second look. I guess it'll be Tuesday tomorrow instead of second look Sunday.
You going to watch this thing again?
Yeah, we got to. We promised the readers and subscribers we'd break down the game for them as we go through it. So I'll be watching it at some point tomorrow. I don't know about you guys, but and then we'll be back Wednesday. Possibly tomorrow we'll do a roundtable, but I think it's going to be Wednesday. We'll come back after we've had a chance to all look at it and come back and break it down one more time and see where we think this team needs to make some adjustments, both from a personnel perspective and maybe a scheme. But listen, bad night for Florida State, bad night for the team on the field, bad night for the coaching staff on the sidelines, and FSU is 0-2 to start the 2024 season. And we will talk to you later. Thanks for joining us on the Osceola Seminole Sidelines, and thanks to Mark Salva and Charles Fishbein for joining me tonight, helping me break it down. Y'all have a good evening, and we'll talk to you later.
Go Noles.
Take it easy.